recording. All right.
Monica James raised her hand.
Okay. We will be starting shortly. Please use your chat feature or your Q&A button at the bottom. Note that the chat feature has all panelists and attendees. So please choose the all panelists and attendees so that everyone sees the chat. Good morning. I show that it is 10 a.m. Eastern time on the dot. So welcome to the Adult Learning During COVID-19 panel discussion. I'm Jen Wigington, the IAACE Executive Director on behalf of IAACE and the Indiana Council for Continuing Education. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'll remind you that you can submit your Q&A at any time. Your Q&A button should be at the bottom of your screen in a black bar. The chat feature, also available at the bottom, can be utilized to talk to other participants or send a good morning and where you're here from. That would be a great way to start so our panelists know who's all out there. And at this time, I will turn it over to our facilitator and moderator, Mr. Rob Moore. Rob, take it away.
Well, thank you, Jen, for putting this together for us, and welcome to all of our attendees today from the Indiana Association for Adult and Continuing Education and the Indiana Council for Continuing Education. For IAACE and our adult basic educators in the state, this is serving as our monthly statewide webinar. So we're happy to have everyone from both organizations to this webinar today on adult learning during COVID-19. We have some great panelists who are going to be joining us today, who are with us today from a variety of backgrounds in adult education, from adult basic education, English language learning, to colleges and universities. So we're very happy about that, so we can all really learn from one another about what our experiences are and what our students are experiencing, and get some great ideas for helping them to manage their learning and make progress toward their goals during this pandemic. First, to start with our introductions, I'll ask each panelist to introduce himself and tell us where they're working and what they're doing, and we'll make some of their background in adult education. So maybe we start with Ted.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ted Pearson. I'm the Director of Correctional Education for Oakland City University. We provide educational services for 14 correctional facilities in Indiana, and I've been in adult education for 30 years.
Yeah. And you're serving as our president-elect, or past president, aren't you, Ted? A couple of years ago, president of our association. So that's wonderful. Great, Tanya.
Good morning. My name is Tania Curruchiche. I am an ESL teacher teaching English as a second language to adults at Broadview Learning Center, part of MCCSC, Monroe County. And we are very excited to be here today. So welcome, everyone.
Okay. Tanya actually teaches English language learning to a statewide audience. She's the teacher for the Indiana online only English language learning program that our state has. So she has a really good pool of students to be drawing experiences from. Stephanie?
Good morning. I'm so happy to participate with you this morning, and I come to you from Anderson University, a small private liberal arts institution in Indiana. And my role at the university really allows me to combine engagement with the adult learning and workforce development. And so we're excited to support students and their goals for returning or getting into the workforce and their success at the institution.
Awesome. Appreciate you having you with us today, Stephanie, and bringing your experiences and the students that you serve. And Ruby Cain, please.
I'm Dr. Ruby Cain, Associate Professor of Practice in Adult and Community Education at Ball State University. And we provide master and doctoral degrees for educators teaching adults.
Great. Thank you so much. And how long have you been in adult education, Ruby? Just a couple of years, I think. Or?
Oh my gosh, almost all my life.
Wonderful.
Before, I've been at Ball State for 10 years, but before that, in the different industries that I worked in, I provided educational programs for the employees.
Excellent, both a practitioner and an academician. So I think
and in communities too.
And communities. So thank you so much for you and Jerry Hafner from Adult Basic Education kind of kicking this idea off for us to have this discussion today. And our attendees, if you could please continue to use the chat to introduce yourselves. I see a lot of that happening. So please introduce yourselves on the chat, and thank you very much. Next, I think we'll go over what the agenda will be today. The subjects that our panelists will be addressing for us. First, we'll talk about who the adult learner is, and that will be different for each of us according to the populations that we serve. So that'd be an interesting introduction to the wide variety of adult education services that our state is providing. We'll talk about some instructional methods that we have used and maybe had to devise during the COVID pandemic, and what we're using before and during. See if there's some differences there and what has remained the same. Thirdly, we'll talk about some challenges that our students and instructors are facing as we address their needs during COVID and the supports that we've had to put in place to help them make progress toward their goals. Fourthly, we'll talk about the impact of COVID-19 on our special populations, such as English language learners, other vulnerable populations, parents of school-age children, those who are incarcerated. And we all have a lot of those types of special populations among the groups that we serve. Fifthly, we'll talk about the COVID-19 impact on the employment of our students, because a lot of industries, as we know, are reducing employment, reducing opportunities for their folks to work, but some are really ramping up and they need people. So we'll talk about some of that range of employment opportunities that are increasing and decreasing for our students during this time. And then we'd love to have some questions to answer from our panelists, and Jen will help us to identify those. So please, again, use your chat and type your questions, comments in, and we'll address those after we get our panelists a chance to address the first 5 items on our agenda. So if that sounds all great, we'll just kind of dig right in. First, we talked about who our adult learner is. So if have each of our panelists describe maybe some of the demographics that our students that we serve, so we get an idea of the types of Hoosiers and their experiences and who they are really that we're serving as we are working in the role of adult education. So how about we have maybe Stephanie, would you start us on that?
Sure, I'd love to do that. You know, at Anderson University, our students, even though we have a definition by which we enroll students, typically the adult learners 25 years of age and older, there's lots of different exceptions that we allow for our students to apply for. So really, it covers a large gamut. I'm thinking of some of the students we enrolled even yet this fall in this challenging time. A veteran that was 23 years of age and a single father, didn't quite fit the definition of the 25 and over individual. And then admitted a veteran that was 60 years of age. And so many of our adult students, though, do come with family obligations, fully employed or unemployed, looking for education to support their employment journey, male, female, a family, no family, a very large demographic, many different characteristics. But I would say Anderson University still has a very large component of face-to-face learning, which is a bit getting to be more unique in the adult learning space at colleges and universities. So some of our students really come with the need to be supported in a face-to-face relational manner, whether that's because of the need to have some assistance with technology, need to have a campus to retreat to in order to complete work, or just the support of folks that can come around them to give them the opportunity to be more successful. Sometimes at the university, folks think that adults might come fully accomplished and fully prepared to learn. And we've really discovered that that is not the case, that we have many GED learners that have applied and are enrolled in our institution. And so during this COVID time, we have had to think of even extra layers of support to provide for our adult learners. We have to and need to, and it's a pleasure to provide support for adults coming in with different levels of learning and achievements in their backgrounds. But COVID has really provided us ample opportunity to think about how we can quickly respond to emerging needs of students that just have been complicated by availability, time, resource, health, etc.
Great. We'll look forward to kind of getting into some of those supports that you provided. So thank you again for that great introduction to your student body. Dr. Ruby Cain, can you talk about some of the adults in general, the demographics that you've served?
Okay, now I teach graduate adult community education courses for master and doctoral degree students. And more than 80% of our master degree students are 30 years of age or older. We generally have at least 3 generations represented in our classes. We have about 30% students of color in the master degrees and approaching 20% students of color in the doctoral degree. The vast majority of our students work. They also have families. Our programs are blended with a combination of classroom and online courses. In the master degree program, depending on course selection, students can complete all courses online. More than 80% of our students identify upon applying into the program their intent to take all their courses online. For the doctoral degree program, the opportunity to take 75% of the courses online. Because of our demographics, we are our students are typically what would be called non-traditional college students, and and I'll talk about that on one of the other questions.
Great. We look forward to that. Thank you, Dr. Ruby, for that great introduction. Ted, how about the population that you serve? You serve a very interesting population we should learn about.
All of our individuals are incarcerated and do not have an HSE, high school equivalency. They come with various backgrounds, especially with family problems. They come to school, and we work with a lot of things like that. Also, a lot of our students come with substance abuse and other different programming that we provide also.
Great. And I know I've been in several of the state facilities that Ted oversees the adult education for, and interesting, what my observation was, when they're in class, I wouldn't know them because they're incarcerated. They look like our students in adult basic education, but they are where they are for whatever reasons. And I know Ted and his team, they do a great job serving the ones that maybe some of the rest of us might have some hesitation to serve, but they were just really wonderful in class. Really appreciated those opportunities. Tanya, can you help us understand the population that you serve?
Absolutely. I mostly serve adults. We're talking about anyone from age 18 or anyone that has withdrawn from any high school and now would like to participate in our adult English classes as a second language. And I have anyone from their 20s and I have a few students in their 60s. So they're coming from all over the world. Many of them, the majority right now, are from Spanish-speaking countries. And they are coming here. They want to work hard. They want to understand the language. But most important of all, when I teach English, I do not teach the literacy necessarily only. I teach the culture. Why people do things the way they do here. Why do people think the way they think here? We need to not get away or do away with our background culture, but integrate so that we can become not only bilingual, but well, the word escaped my mind. Bicultural, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you so much. Bicultural. So you understand things instead of saying, but I don't understand. This is very confusing. So I let them know the reason behind. So, oh, that's why they do that? Yes. So I enrich their knowledge. Again, it's not just learn how are you today, but why do people do things again and think the way they think. So most of my students are, like I said, adults. They have family. They have 2, 3, 4 children. They are some of them come from countries where they had readily available their stores, in walking distances. Now they have to learn how to get a driver's license. They have to learn how to drive. They have to perhaps start learning how to ride the bus. So a lot of things are not just in a language a barrier, but it's just everything. So I make them a little bit more comfortable. Why? Because I know I was there. I came to the States in 2003, and I worked 2, 3 jobs as a single mom. So I know what it is to have 2, 3, 5 minutes while I'm at the doctor's office waiting for the doctor to come in. So I know those 5, 10 minutes are precious, and therefore I try to do the lessons in a way that they will capture the essence of it instead of well, it's a lecture, you listen, you learn. No, it has to be interactive. It has to be in a way that they are engaged, because again, these are adults that are making this extra time. Again, I came in 2003. I started at Ivy Tech in 2009 and graduated with a master's in 2019. So it took me 10 years to get my master's, but I did it. And that is a story that I tell them. If I can do it, you can do it. Working 2, 3 jobs, raising 3 kids, and making sure I went to school at night. So this pandemic, in a way, has been a great asset in our favor for distance learning, because now we are able to teach people that are at home, people that cannot go to school. If I had to go in person to get my master's, I would never have graduated. So IU East it's a great university. It allowed me to go online. So during the day, my jobs, my family, my kids, help them with homework, everything. And then at night, then I would study. So I know that all these people that are telling me, but when do I do this? So I tell them, we can do it. 5, 10 minutes. So in fact, the classes, 1 hour to me work really well. 1 hour, you give them a lot of content and homework. Yes, homework. However, the kind of homework that I give them is a little bit different than your normal homework that is given to them. So perhaps later on, I can tell you a couple of things of how I give them homework, and they can work 5 minutes at a time, 3 minutes at a time. So their time is precious. Adult education is necessary, but we as teachers have to make sure we give them the best resources, and they will engage, because they won't have to spend 2 or 3 hours sitting in front of a computer. No, they can do it from their phone. So it's exciting times.
Yes, Tanya has a lot of credibility with her students because she's walked the walk herself as an adult learner, and now she's on the other side of the desk and help those who are coming right up behind her, and has a lot of credibility for us, obviously, as both an adult learner and as now an adult education teacher. Wonderful. I think, speaking on behalf of our program, also in Monroe County, our adult basic education, we tend to serve those who are 16 years old and older. And a lot of people may ask, well, how can you possibly serve a 16-year-old in adult education? They're hardly an adult. Well, at age 16, that's in Indiana, the age at which they can drop out of high school. And since we are connected with a school corporation, we can pick those people up pretty quickly, because their guidance counselors and principals are just referring them right across the street to us. So we can just kind of embrace them in a new way, rather than just allow the dropout to happen. But actually, our largest age range of students right now is 24 to 44. That young adult age, they're getting into the workforce, or maybe they're in the workforce for a while and looking for a change. So that age group is actually tends to be our largest. Our ethnic makeup, mostly white. I guess typical kind of Indiana, I suppose, but our other ethnicities have historically been largely Asian, drawn by the university. But now, as a result of COVID, I think, IU is not drawing the folks from those Asian countries any longer as much as they had been. So now it's our home folks, and they tend to be Spanish speaking now, that are coming into our program, thanks in part to Tanya as one of the main draws, but also I think they are seeing that there's a place for them in our program. So I'm just very happy about that. Let's maybe move on to some of those instructional delivery that we're using, maybe pre-COVID and now during COVID. What strategies are we using to deliver instruction, and how has that changed from pre-COVID to the current time? And maybe we can start with maybe Ted on that one.
Before pre-COVID, we would have 20 students in a classroom, and the teachers would have an afternoon class, a morning class, and an afternoon class. And it was a traditional classroom. They provided student assessments, hands-on learning, interaction with fellow students, and small group instruction. And then they would also provide students assignments to do when they went back to the dorm. Since that time, our instruction has been learner packets. Teachers will go to the dormitories where the students are at. They will provide them a packet, ask them if they have any questions or at all. And then they will also, they do it each day, and then they grade the assignments, and then they take them back the next day. We also, Department of Correction has a tablet from the GTL. This tablet has I-Pathways on it. So we encourage the students to use the tablets and I-Pathways to also get additional instruction. Basically, our goal is to be consistently trying to motivate our students, is what we're mainly trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Now in the Indiana State prisons, did any of the instruction stop when this COVID virus hit? And how long was it shut down, if so, and when were you able to open up again?
Each facility is different. It's based on the number of COVID cases. 2 of our facilities are housing offenders in quarantine, so therefore there's no instruction at all there. The teachers have to do it directly in the dorms. After 14 days, if they haven't had any new cases, we can begin classroom instruction again with 10 students. We socially distance all the students apart. Mm-hmm. And the main thing is it's a day-by-day thing depending on the COVID cases, and each facility is different.
Right. So it sounds like you really went to some distance learning, just maybe using some traditional methods, pencil, paper packets, and maybe iPad, but distance learning nonetheless in the setting that you're in. That's great. Yes. Thank you so much. How about Tanya on that? You use some really interesting delivery methods, I think, that would be appropriate whether we had COVID or not COVID. So maybe you kind of describe what your classes look like.
Absolutely. There are 3 important things to me that I always keep in mind when I do any kind of homework. 1, again, these are adults and they need to have it readily available. Usually my students don't own a laptop, a computer, or even an iPad.
And Tanya, you're either thinking or you froze.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we got you now. It's like you went, like, what am I going to say next?
Well, sorry about that. I'm not sure about the internet. Again, what I was saying is important to deliver to them what is readily available for them, and that is their phone. Many of our students do not have resources to buy a computer or a laptop or an iPad, but our school has been gracious enough to provide some of those devices to some of our students. Now, one thing that I am doing now, let's focus on listening skills. I know there are a lot of ways we can do this, but one way that I like to do this is it takes a little bit on our part as teachers, but then again, we do a lot of work to prepare for our lessons. So this would be in that little time. So I'm going to share my screen here. If you could let me share, that would be great. Would it be okay if I share my screen so that I can show here?
Certainly okay with me. Jen, can you do that?
Try again.
Wonderful, yes. All right, now, here we see just a lesson for, say, for level 1. What's your name? Now we can, as teachers, we can say, okay, everybody repeat, what's your name, which we should do. And then at the end of the lesson, I send them a link. And all they have to do is click on the link and they will have this document right here. Now I'm going to enlarge it so we can see a little bit better. If you see these buttons here, they're audio. So whenever you click on them, or your students would click on them, they would see a little, well, let's see here. Well, I do apologize. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we just have to do it a little bit bigger here on this side. Okay. They click on this button or they hover over the button and you see a little audio there. So right here where it says click here for instructions, that is something that I do for them. Again, this is for level 1. So the instruction would be in Spanish. So there is a way, and this is the program is Google Slides. It's free. You can do it. It's free for your students as well. So they can just download it. You can help them for the very first time, maybe a second time, to download the program so that they can know how to do it. But once they do it and they remember every homework that you send them, it will be the same. So you can insert audio here. Now, at the end of the program of this session, probably I will give you, or maybe Jennifer will send a couple of the links for YouTube videos where they show you how to insert and how to record audio. So now here is me. If you can hear it, I will be speaking Spanish. These are for Spanish speakers. So I click here, they click here, and they hear the instructions. I don't know if you're able to hear it, but were you able to hear a little bit? Okay, well, that is just for you to hear an audio. So I'm telling them what the instructions are. And now this here, I insert an audio with the speed that a native English speaker would speak this. So this is another website where you can download all these pre-recorded conversations. So you don't have to do all the work. So what I'm doing is recording the instructions and then inserting the audio here. So it's not a lot of work, but once you do that,
what's your name? Dialogue 1.
Okay, were you able to hear that a little bit?
A little bit.
Maybe? Okay, so this is another way so that they can hear the recording over and over and over and over. Instead of you repeat. They can have this in their phone anywhere they go, at the grocery store while they're pushing their cart, or they're doing exercises if they have time for that, or cooking, anytime. So this is very, very easy for them to just click on their phone, get it there, instead of having to sit down and open a book or listen, find an audio in your email or anything like that. So this is one way that is fast for them. And then I tell them in the instructions, listen to each recording at least 3 times and then another thing, their homework is for them to record. Now, many of my students that are Spanish speakers use WhatsApp. There's an app that is called WhatsApp. It's free. In fact, you can call international, you can video chat international at no cost at all. So most of them use that. So once they hear this recording, they record it with their own voice. And I asked them also to record it in Spanish as well, because I want to know that they are understanding. They're not just repeating some words that sound like English, but they know actually what they're saying. So again, this is ready. They don't have to download a program for recording or buy a program or anything. No, again, WhatsApp is very, very common among a lot of Latino students. Now, this could also be downloaded for any other speaker, whether or not they're Spanish, so that they can hear the recording and record it and send it back to you. So that's one way. I know we could go in length.
I think that's actually a great example of how a really innovative use of technology that you've taken, modified, and it really produces learning not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom. Thanks for sharing that great example. Turning to our post-secondary colleagues, maybe Dr. Ruby, could you describe maybe how some of the instructional delivery that you have delivered has changed?
Okay, well, pre-COVID, our programs were blended with a combination of classroom and online courses. In the master degree programs, depending on course selection, many of our students could complete all their courses online, and more than 80% actually identify upon applying to the program their intent to take all their courses online. In our doctoral degree, there's the opportunity to take approximately 75% of the courses online. So in mid-March, when we had our first lockdown, all classroom courses were moved to an online format, and that would be either synchronous or asynchronous, depending on the professor preference, and which relate a lot to maybe the content and how they felt the students would best learn the material. We are continuing with the online format through spring of 2021. So in spring this year, in 2020, I taught a course that met 5 full Saturdays over the course of 16 weeks. So at the time of our lockdown, the last 2 sessions were we met synchronously. Now, I was really worried at first about possibly losing some of the dynamics and energy we had in the classroom, particularly because the course content and the ability for students to feel comfortable and in a trusting environment. The course was called Cultural Identities and Community Engagement. And we focused on the intersectionality of cultural identities and how that impacted our perspectives of various culture issues. And it requires a lot of understanding of also, one of the things we analyzed the existence of systemic racism in the US since its inception. So it really required a lot of in-depth critical reflection, and that type of content is best delivered in a face-to-face environment. But my worries about it, that did not happen, luckily, and students were able to present their projects online using PowerPoint, video, and other visual images, and stay engaged throughout the entire day. We did take several breaks in order for the students to get away from the screen for a while, but it really worked well. And one distinct advantage for many of the students is they didn't have to worry about the time it took to travel to Muncie for meeting in the classroom. So some of our students drive as much as an hour and a half one way in order to take the courses.
Great, great. So you can eliminate that. That's a lot more time for learning and studying than than being on the road. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. Great. So it sounds like you took a great activity that would have happened in class, but made it more like a professional conference kind of thing, because it just sort of
Right.
lasted several times, took breaks like you would in a conference. Wonderful experience for them.
Yeah.
Dr. Stephanie Moran, how about at Anderson?
Well,
Professional strategies that you've gone to.
Anderson University really adjusted much like Ball State in terms of being able to provide instruction in an online format where maybe it had been blended or not offered online before. One thing that I did find that helped our adult students was not to lock them into a synchronous or asynchronous type of learning, but through each course to be able to offer both opportunities. So if for some reason, if they were ill, if they had a family member that was ill, they weren't locked in to being online at a specific time in order to complete the course successfully. Additionally, and in my department, it isn't just about the delivery itself. You know, are you using Zoom? Are you using Kaltura through the Canvas, et cetera? But is how we assure the success of the students where they're at. And so some is the technology, and then some is what we've been able to do to try to support the success. And what I have learned is to give the adult students as much information as they need and as much support as they need as quickly as possible. Many of them have a very limited time frame by which they can seek out assistance and support, and they need it when they need it. And so that's one of the lessons that we've learned, and we really tried to amp up our ability to respond with less friction within the system, but also as rapidly as possible. I know one of the questions in the chat asked about how we are addressing the depression and motivation for students within the context of what they're using. And that has been one thing we've really focused on. And so we have increased at the university, one of the assets was we had this kind of a suite and a policy, drop in anytime if you just need to connect to something, whether it's a resource on campus, a laptop because yours is down, or you just need some encouragement. And so we've tried to increase those opportunities virtually by having like coffee conversations virtually, by having posted office hours for our success coaches that you could just pop in at any time during specific times in the day. And that's been really, really important in addition to what the professors are doing in specific courses. So that's just a few things. And certainly the mental health of our students has been challenged. And we worked with a mental health provider, Jane Pauley, here in Indiana, to help provide some more opportunities for our students pretty seamlessly within their day. And I couldn't recommend that enough, just being very intentional to ask the questions of your students, create opportunities they could share, and then provide the response to them, whether it would be by professionals or just collective response within your area of influence or your department.
That's wonderful. I think that leads us right into our next topic about the challenges that our students are facing and the supports we're putting in place. So let me ask you, Stephanie, about the office hours that are, is that happening still like in person, or is it virtual office hours? Are they offering like through Teams or something like that?
Right. So we offer it virtually, but if indeed there's a situation where a student needs some face-to-face time, we really try to make that opportunity available. In the very beginning of COVID, we had lockdown and our campus was not available to most faculty, staff, or students. Now all the coursework is virtually, but we still have permissions to meet safely, with the mask and the social distancings, et cetera, with students. But the majority of the time it is virtual. But creating that access, again, there's just sometimes questions that come up for adults. Sometimes there's just some advocacy work that needs to be done from miscommunication of all the online learning with professors, and you just need to be there when they need you. So it's creating that access. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, awesome. While we're on the topic, we have you, Stephanie. Any other supports and challenges that you had to do at Anderson? The mental health, I think, came through very strongly and probably common to a lot of us. Any others at Anderson that you have had some success?
I think, in the conversation that we've been having, life has not stopped. It's only just become more complicated, and heartbreaking stories occur all the time. but they've been more complicated. I've had 2 adult students who have lost siblings to actual gun violence in this last 6 months. And then how do you arrange for childcare to respond to that? How do you think about services for your loved ones in response when we're so isolated from one another? And it's been difficult. It has really incentivized us to think, though, who can be our partners in this work that may not exist on campus, but in community. And so on multiple occasions, we've had to do a little legwork to say, who is near to those folks that can wrap their arms around them, either through services or just relationships, to help them build the resiliency they need to continue on successfully. So sometimes it's been church groups or community not-for-profits, different educational providers that have been able to partner with us to assist these students and to kind of take down barriers and walls that exist because we're a university or an institution. We can't do it by ourselves. We need other providers and services and individuals to support our students as we move through this very challenging time.
Right.
It's a layered, right? It's been layered grief for people at times and layered challenges financially, emotionally, the whole thing. So
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Ted, how about in the population you serve? Any particular challenges you faced serving the incarcerated population and some of the supports you've had to put in place?
Basically, a lot of the face-to-face contact we haven't had over the last several months. So it's been hard to provide direct encouragement and feedback for our students, which is very important for them. They do need that. Basically, the instructors have been printing off lots of homework for the students, taking them to the students, help them with different learning styles, so they do feel like they're moving forward and are having success. One of the challenges we've had is we've not been able to give the HSE to offenders that are in quarantine in dorms. Then they've been able to go home. So therefore, we try to provide them information for a local adult education program they can contact to be able to succeed and get their HSE.
Right.
Supports we put in place is students and instructors all wear masks at all times when they're face-to-face instruction. We also disinfect our classrooms after every class to make sure we try to get rid of everything. Our education staff have been very, very supportive to the facility. There at one point, all of our facilities were locked down. So after the teachers met with their students, they provided support to the facility by making lunches, taking temperatures, and just helping the facility out, being a partner with them.
Great. Thank you. That's a pretty tough population to provide those kind of supports to when you're limited in what you can do. So it sounds like you guys found some innovative things to do to support them and continue learning after they're released. Great. And Ruby, in the graduate adult education population you're serving, particular challenges that you have faced and helped them to overcome?
Okay, well, some of the challenges that I know about was the loss of jobs, assisting your children with learning from home and acclimation to online instruction, contracting the virus, or a family member or dear friend contracting the virus, loss of a loved one, and this could be non-COVID related or COVID related, and inability to travel to funeral services or no services were held. The stress of dealing with the stay-at-home order, going out for essential services like groceries and encountering shoppers who did not wear masks. And there are many challenges that were unrelated to COVID-19, but exacerbated by it, like the one I just mentioned. But one student had to gather up her family and possessions and flee her home at night due to the Oregon fires, and then find some place where she could have temporary, a temporary place to stay. I stayed personally pretty much sequestered at home due to my high vulnerability to the virus. And I have had to tell friends that I am not attending any in-person events and they cannot come to my home. Most understand, but some do not. Some get pretty angry. I approved more incompletes for students not able to complete their assignments that were precipitated by COVID-19 virus this year than the total I have approved over the last 10 years. I have had students working to fulfill incompletes who experience additional tragedies or illnesses. So at Ball State, we do have the option to extend an incomplete beyond the requisite time with the department chair and the dean approval. I have 4 extensions so far this year, and there may be more next year because I have some that come up for expiration in the spring. As far as Dr. Stephanie, she brought up an extremely good point about issues with mental health, depression, stress, all of those. And our campus did increase the services for their clinic on campus, but really could not meet the entire need. They were just overwhelmed with the number of students who had needs. And we do provide accommodations through our Office of Disability Services. And in the past, some students have been reluctant to speak up because as adults, they feel like they should be able to take care of their own problems and not need support. So I do encourage students to seek out what accommodations are possible for them through the Office of Disability Services. And I do this, for the students in my courses as well as my advisees in the 2-degree programs. I'm finding that more students are willing to admit, because there's been more visibility about the fact that these are issues that are that do require, additional supports or accommodations. But definitely, I don't believe that all students are seeking the support they need.
Yeah. Well, I just love how you are really accommodating to the students academically and extending those incompletes. And it creates a lot of work on an instructor to do that, but I think that's very self-giving, and I'm sure the students really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Tanya, for the English language learning population that you're serving, any particular challenges that you've seen them face and that supports that you put in place for them?
Absolutely. One of the things about my students there is that mothers who are taking care of their children at home. How do you teach a mother that has a baby in their arms while their 2, 3, 4-year-old is in needing of attention? Unfortunately, many of our classes do not match their quiet time at home. So how do we navigate through that when they desire to learn English? Every school may have their different policies. However, the way my classes are the following. They can attend just like you and I are right now. You're listening in front of your device with your full attention, or they can have earphones and put their camera on off and have their phone in their pocket and be there as listeners. 3, I also let them have their children with them. And of course, they're all on mute, so we don't have all the background noise, but they are there. I have mothers who are feeding their child while right before their husband comes home so that they can have this time of learning. Now, again, when learning takes place, they are fully engaged as well as taking care of their kids. And I know this is hard, but then again, if we don't give them the chance, at least this way, how can they won't be able to come to school or get childcare for their children. So I accommodate those because I was there again. Now, it is very important to let them know that they do matter to us. So many of them that are working, they're called For instance, some of my students in the morning, they work all day at night, all day and at night, and then in the morning they come home to sleep. They get a call, hey, you need to come in. So they go in right at 8:30 when my class starts. So they said, teacher, can I be on as a listener? I would like to listen because I need to go into the restaurant and start cleaning or washing dishes or anything. I said, absolutely. Why do I let them do that? Because they feel a sense of connection. They feel a sense of community instead of, oh no, we just need people that can be in front of their device and have full attention. We can't with the adults. And how do I know this is serving them well? Because every class that I do, I record. I have my little YouTube channel. Now, it is not public. It is not for anyone who would like to. It is only for people that I give access to. So I tell them, if you don't want to be on YouTube, just privately, put your camera on off so you won't. But they want to be. They say we want to be famous to be in class. So, anyways, I record it and I send them a link after class is over so that they can go home whenever they have the time and listen and watch this class and do the homework assigned with that class. So again, they are engaged and they feel like they have a sense of purpose because although they're just as listeners, they can watch the video later on, learn how to do the homework, turn in the homework so that I know that they did watch the video, they did take their time, they did study, and they took the time to do homework. Now, again, this might be a little bit different than what you're used to, but again, I'm trying to engage the adults in any possible way that they can. They want to. Many of them, again, they have only 1 hour, while they have to do other things. But I welcome them. I welcome them so that they can do the homework and advance a little bit. One thing that I tell them, and before I go, one thing that I tell them is learning English is a journey, not a destination, just like life. Life is a journey, not a destination. So every day, learning English is a way of life. It's a lifestyle. So again, just give them a chance. Adults, especially that want to learn English as a second language, want to contribute to this country, want to contribute to their family, want to become better citizens, want to become and more involved in everything they do in their family, their children. So this is a way that I give them a chance to be successful, not just in English, but for their life.
And in the adult basic education world, I can add also some of those supports we put have to do with digital literacy and test taking, because we are required to have always been required to pre-test and post-test students to show measurable gains for our funding. And now we've had to kind of open up to, and thanks to the federal government for allowing this, but to not pre-test people, to give them a provisional measure of their skills, and also to do then remote proctoring from home. So it sounds like some of the things that we are now doing would have just been not allowed, as much as a year ago, such as the extending of the incompletes at the graduate level and the bringing your children to school with you would have been unthinkable in a lot of places. Taking your tests at home. So it's been really quite a change there, quite a 180-degree change. Let's kind of talk about then, before we take our questions and answers, and does anybody want to chime in more about any impact that you've seen on our special populations or on employment that we can add to? I just want to make sure we spend enough time with questions and answers here in a few moments, but anything, because some of those things have come up already, but anything else people want to add on those topics that maybe we didn't cover?
There's one thing that I would like to add, and our graduate school has offered regular, probably about twice a month, what they call graduate wellness initiatives. And these are offered via Zoom. So there are things for students to focus on their mental and physical wellness and health. And I thought that was extremely good to, for the university to acknowledge this is something that should be a priority for everyone.
Great, thank you, thank you. Jen, what kind of questions do we have on the chat that we could address?
Absolutely. We have a question in regards, and please tell me if you feel you've answered this live. Tanya, elaborating on the homework you give outside of the class.
Yes, I'm sorry, your question was?
Please elaborate on the homework you give outside of the class.
Okay. Yes, for listening skills is what I was just referring to a few minutes ago. I make a document so that they can listen and listen and listen, have it in their phones anytime. Now, as far as writing, when we're talking about level one, level two, when we are just learning English, I am an old-fashioned pen and paper teacher. So I give them a handout, well, digital, if you will. And I tell them, I want you to write it on your notebook. And their homework is to write it and send me a picture of what they have written. So, I give them all the time, you have until Sunday at 11:59. They always laugh about it, but give them ample time. Because again, they will do it when they do have time. Again, with homework, you give them for listening skills, for written skills, and also you give them readings. You have them read something. You also, if we're talking about Spanish speakers, we translate it in Spanish the way we would say it in Spanish, because again, you cannot literally translate everything from English to Spanish. It does not make sense. So we talk about how would you say it in your local community. Again, each country, Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, every country has a different way of saying things. So it's very nice to see how in your country, in their country, in her country, things are being said. So we create a community in that time classroom. We create a community so they feel like, oh, they're part of it. So they will write on their homework. In my country, we would say blah, 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 blah. So they write it again. They send me a picture. I always tell them they have to be accountable. If we want to succeed, we have to be accountable. So homework is extremely, extremely important. If anyone does have a particular question, they can, I am sure, email me and we can go over some things that they would like to talk about.
Great, thank you. Any other, Jen, that we should address?
The general question for all panelists, how do you address lack of motivation, depression during this challenging time?
Great.
I tried to address that a little bit in the answer that I provided in terms of being more available virtually and providing some extra support services for our students. Not that totally negates and answers all those challenges or meets all those challenges. I do, one of the questions that we were going to address and really didn't talk about was the fact that how has COVID impacted some of these special populations? And that kind of also goes along with this mental health and motivation type of response. But I really have found for our adults, they were impacted more significantly than the traditional age students that we saw on our campus. One, they couldn't isolate quite as easily because they were working, they were caring for parents, for children, things that their children were exposed to, they became exposed. So the virus itself impacted the adults more rapidly. What we see now, and job loss, a lot of our adult students were just part-time workers or maybe entry-level jobs so that they could accommodate their schools. And so they were some of the first to lose their positions in our community or be out of the workforce, as well as housing. Housing was a significant component of the challenges some of our adults had felt. So not only was it their physical and mental health that became challenged by COVID, but some of these, the work and the housing and the need for services, or if they had been seeking services, they weren't able to get to those services once COVID has hit. Many things like telehealth has been able to accommodate some of our adult students, but really very quickly were impacted. And now as we continue this second wave and some of the fiscal supports that have been provided are no longer available to our students, we are seeing many adults having to drop out of the learning experience for now to focus on more immediate needs that they have. So
Great point.
Yeah, I'd like to, like agree with Dr. Stephanie, but also I tell my students, and this is even before COVID and now as well, is there are many challenges the adult learner faces to persist. And it's not a matter of if, but when those challenges will impact your persistence. So you're not the first to experience this, and there are options that are available to you. And some of the options I provide for my students is, of course, doing either a hardship withdrawal from the course, persisting as much as they can, and being offered an incomplete for that course. And one of the things that we do allow, and I will probably have more students doing this because of COVID, is they can retake the course, but not have to pay for it in order to fulfill their incomplete. So they can have that engagement with the other students rather than having to do the assignments on their own, particularly if those were group assignments. So I think it's important for us to realize the challenges that adult learners will always face, and be able to identify varying options that they can take. And another thing, I actively advocate for for additional supports and options for the students through our administration. So, and like Ms. Tanya, I I was an older student going through my graduate program, and so I can really identify with my students who are going through it at this point. So, and I actually graduated from the doctoral program. So I have the perspective from taking the courses, for having the same challenges that some of my students have, and also from being the instructor. So having that, 360 experience with the same things that they are being challenged with today provides me with compassion, empathy, and also advocacy. I want to do what I can to make sure my students are successful.
Great. Well, the time says 11:02, so we should wrap up now. And I want to just thank our
Rob,
Yes,
we
yeah.
have scheduled to go for 30 minutes with Q&A.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we
Yeah.
can keep going
Yeah,
then.
we
Okay,
got plenty of time for that.
okay. Well, what else do we have on the chat then?
Ted, for Ted from Lisa Crewy and Linda Durrell, what is GTL and I pathways? And for prisoners, when will they receive electronic devices? In other words, what are their interactive learning options?
All of our population have an iPad in their possession, which is not just used for education, it's used for commissary and communication with their family. iPathways is one program that was put on the tablets just specifically for academic learning. GTL stands for Global Tel-Link, an integrated training, integrated technology. And basically, iPathways is a program that we use for learning, test prep, so they can prepare for the HSE back in the cell houses also.
And Ted, can any of that technology be used, like on the outside we would use Zoom? Can it be a teacher talking with a group of students through that, or or not?
We have one of our people that is working on that, and we are getting closer to being able to do that. And we want to be able to monitor the assignments they're also doing back in the dorm.
Great. Yeah, because I know that security of communication is very important in the prison. So I know it's got to be thought of and tested and tested and tested and retested until that's rolled out for sure. So you guys are doing a great job there. We appreciate that. Yeah. I kind of think too, some of the challenges and supports we put in place is, I may have mentioned in the previous comment about digital literacy. We're finding our younger adult education students, they are digitally literate in their own way. So a lot of the products that we use in education are basically they're tablet based, they're laptop based, they're desktop based, but our younger students are phone based. So we've had to teach them almost a new set of digital literacy skills and try to avoid thinking they're not digitally literate, that they are with the tools that they use. And has anybody else had the kind of experience where you've had to teach them a new set of digital literacy skills to function in these new ways?
I think that the younger generation, the digital skills that they have is driving changes in the university. We moved from Blackboard to Canvas because the platform was much easier to use on the cell phones. And so, and then one of the things I believe that the university did was, because everyone has a cell phone now, they stopped providing phone service in the dorms. So I think, and one of the things that, you know, like I'd say like 10 years ago, I had students who didn't have a computer, who, you know, were taking their first online course from me. And it took them, you know, a couple of times of taking courses to feel real comfortable. And for some professors, they feel that those students are, you know, not serious students, not, you know, they're lazy students. And even some of the students feel that way. And one of the things that I tell my students, and it's in my syllabus, is that we are working to co-construct the learning environment in such a way that all students will succeed. So that means sometimes the instruction will be slower than your pace or a little faster than your pace, but we want you to be patient and ensure that we all, you know, get there together at the end of the course. So I think it's important for us not to prejudge our students because they don't have the digital skills of another student or the majority of the students, that we need to ensure that they receive the support that they need or in order to be successful. And one of the things I've noticed is that those students, when you see them, you know, like a few semesters later, they excel in the class and they are more than willing to help the students who are struggling with the digital technology. So by not giving up on them, we're creating, you know, individuals who are great advocates for their colleagues.
Great, great. And, you know, a kind of wake up call for this novice was when the coronavirus hit, you know, our registration system kind of changed. We had always, for generations, have had the setup where if you want to come into our adult basic ed program, you call during the office hours, Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 3:30. We are open. We'll take your information. We'll get sign you up for orientation. Well, of course, we went to an online registration system, you know, us generations late. And I am surprised, the wake up call for me was at what time people want to access our services.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday at 2 in the morning. It's a great idea to study for your high school equivalency test, to start doing that at Saturday at 2 in the morning. It's all time
Exactly. I'm responding to emails at Saturday at 2 in the morning. And the majority of my advising sessions are after work hours because my students work from 8 to 5. So, you know, it's nights, it's weekends. And I think the university still hasn't come to grips with that because our office hours are at 8 to 5, and in the summer, 7:30 to 4. Well, that doesn't meet the needs of our non-traditional students, which are the majority of the students in the university now. So there is a need for us to acknowledge the fact that our students need us other than a traditional 8 to 5.
Yes, yeah. Anybody else kind of chime in on that too? Dr. Stephanie Moran?
Well, yeah, when you talk about technology, it is one of those areas that I feel like you have to be able to address with the students for them to be able to be successful. And what I was reading an article just even this morning in preparation where they were showing that one of the number one issues for this response of COVID and the success of students is making sure people, regardless whether it's formal, informal, what the objective is, have the access to the technology and the support to apply that technology. I know there was a question that was presented by one of our participants here that talked about internet access and what do you do even if somebody has a device but their internet isn't stable enough or strong enough. And I think as facilitators of learning and educators, we have to really advocate for better services and learn what are some of the patches that may be available to support those students. And I know I live in a rural area as well as an urban area, and rural learners have a lot of challenges with internet access. And we have learned that if you wait to off-speed times or less traffic, you can download what's available on that learning platform or the assignment, or I know there's been conversations about the different ways that we distribute the learning, but if they can download and use those services during the evening or the night when the internet traffic isn't as busy, more folks can have access. But what I've learned, especially during these times, is if we're reliant upon virtual learning and yet we don't attend to what the issues are, we're creating greater and greater inequities within the context of our communities and those that we are serving. So it really is a moral obligation that I feel like I have, if I want to address those things, to address the technology in whatever way I can, even if it means trying to write a grant so that I can get more cellular hotspots to get into the hands of those who need it. It's a very important issue and probably one of the top issues in success for our students at this point.
Absolutely, great point. Jen, could you pitch
For-
another
for
question?
our-
Dr.
For our synchronous online courses, we do use platforms that allow for phone access if your internet is unstable or shaky, and our university provides excellent technical support. Unfortunately, what I've seen now is that it's no longer offered on Saturday and Sunday, and it may be because most of the students are doing online as opposed to being on campus. Now all the students have gone home and everything is going to be online. So hopefully that'll come back in the new year.
Great, thank you. Jen, could you pitch another question to us from the chat?
From Karen Crawford, I have been teaching online since March. I feel that my synchronous time is much more focused with my students than the face-to-face environment we use every minute we have together. Have you noticed any difference with the time in learning materials between the two environments? And with the ELL, have you noticed students seem to have better focus on pronunciation as they can clearly see the mouth online? Any thoughts?
Great, who'd like to start us on that? Tanya, there's an ELL part of that question. Maybe you can help us with that part.
Absolutely. Yes. I do Zoom courses, and again, I record them so that the ones that are not able to come to class are able to watch it later. Yes, I think Rob, Mr. Rob has been there in some of my classes when I get really close to the mic, to the camera, and enunciate, for instance, coming to. So it is very good when you're, of course, imagine if we were face to face, I wouldn't be able to get this close to somebody, but we do have the advantage because of the camera to show them exactly how to move your lips, how to do all these things that they can see, they can hear, they can repeat. Now, with the ELLs, if we're talking about K through 12, that might be a little bit different in the delivery. They might have different ways of strategies for them. But for the adults, they have to learn the English as if they were speaking. Now, let me explain what I mean. If I'm going to say, "What are you doing?" Now, you would understand, but that is not necessarily how we say it on everyday conversation. We don't say, "What are you doing?" We say, "What are you doing?" What are you doing? So those little connections, it makes you think you're speaking faster. It's not faster. You're just connecting the words. Now, those things is what I teach my adults. So again, if we're talking ELLs from K through 12, they would be probably taught how to pronounce every single syllable, and just as I do on with my adult students, but as well, I teach them how to do the pronunciation on an everyday basis. So I'm not sure if I did address your question, but there might be different strategies as far as the difference between teaching adults and teaching ELL from K through 12.
Great. Anybody else on the use of time? Have you found the time more focused because we're using these distance learning strategies?
Seeing none, I'll go on with another question.
I'd like to say
okay.
a couple, just real quick. I teach mostly online, and I do a lot of highly engaged activities online asynchronously. Only had one class that was face-to-face, and I was pleasantly surprised that the engagement continued in the online environment, and that was online synchronous.
Great.
All right.
Jen?
Interesting question, I think, from Barbara Stith. How much are you seeing the same mental upset in your teachers? A couple of my teachers are strongly affected by all of this craziness. Any thoughts?
Ted, how have you made the teachers in corrections a little more comfortable in that environment? Because you're obviously a closed environment there. How have you helped your teachers kind of maintain their mental confidence and so forth in that environment?
We encourage our teachers to support each other, try to do some activities with each other when we have some idle time. We have discussions with teachers at teachers at the same facility, but mainly we're providing them encouragement, providing them support, providing them any material they need. Basically provide them anything we can to help them succeed and stay positive, and because it gets very frustrating for some of them, especially when they become idle and they're doing jobs they normally haven't done before, but we remind them we're a partnership with the Department of Correction and we're in this together.
Good. How about other panelists from our
educators aren't exempt from the stress of everything that's gone on with COVID. And I know at our institution, there has been intentionality to say, how can we get some wellness activities and conversations and resources into the hands of those who need it and want it? Obviously, that's varying levels, but that has been well received. I know personally, we borrowed some resources from Ball State because they've done a really good job at trying to support the wellness of their employees. We have created, again, those intentional conversations and invited people to come together just to share and have those water cooler hallway conversations that connect us with each other to support some of that emotional well-being and share ideas of how to adapt. But, I have certainly observed, again, that there's been a lot of loss and a lot of challenges, not for our students, but also for the facilitators, educators, faculty, staff, everyone. And being as caring as possible and being intentional about it, sending notes, making the phone calls, getting on Zoom when you don't have certain objectives you have to meet, just to connect can go a long way. And then making sure that people have access to mental health services, to those counseling services that are so necessary, and permission and encouragement to use them, right?
Yeah. As a director of adult education program, I've tried to address that issue by giving our teachers much more flexibility than I either desired or was able to do. For example, when we have our new student intake, we have new student intake every 6 weeks, and if the students intake during this week, we start them on that day. I've always now given our teachers now more flexibility. You can pre-test these students. You can bring them in. We'll let you know at the end of the 6-week time period when it's time to bring them in. But if you want to bring them in early to kind of not have everything all sort of backed up to create that would result in stress, you can certainly do that. This is kind of one example that I did to try to help our teachers kind of overcome and be a little bit less stressed about some of our common procedures.
I think that sense of being able to give each other grace and some flexibility is huge. And, I have seen and I've read where there's been two stances where the people have increased the accountability, want to know where you're at if you're working at home, everything that you're doing. And then another approach that says, we know this is tough. We know that you may need to get up and move away from your computer or whatever you're doing for a time, or adjust your life or do things a little differently. And I've really observed that the response from our campus has been much better when we've been able to do the things that you're saying, is how can we make this easier on you during this most challenging time and not more difficult? So I appreciate that type of attitude and posture when managers and supervisors can respond that way.
Yes, yeah. Do we think that some of that stress, is it coming from our teachers are having more work to do, or is it different work, or where's that stress kind of coming from that we can help address a little bit more effectively during this time?
Yes and yes. It's more and different, right? The adjustment that people have to continue to make. It's learning new things, right? As educators, we're having to learn the tools of the online virtual trade. I also have read studies that just being online and in your brain, trying to assimilate the conversation you're having and observing the beautiful beach scene behind Dr. Cain, and, your brain can get on overload trying to connect emotional receptors in what's going on. And so it can be exhausting, and that's real. And to be able to acknowledge that, I think, is important. So yes, and yes, and yes to all those things makes us exhausted.
Great. Tanya, as an instructor yourself?
Yes, I would like to chime in a little bit on that. Let's remember that, as teachers, educators, or directors, our focus is in our job, what we do and what we deliver, what our students are receiving. However, we must keep in mind, speaking about the stressors, there are plenty of stressors for adults in the news and the radio, advertisement, my neighbor, the Facebook, the post here, what I heard. So there are stressors everywhere you turn. So one of my students last week said, teacher, can I please turn in my homework next week? I am so sorry, I haven't been able to do it. I said, absolutely, you can do that. She says, well, I don't know if you knew, but I'm getting my GED in Spanish and I am on my finals and I am very excited. She's 50 some years old. And I said, congratulations. So we are giving them, assignments, homework, and lessons and everything. But they also have every one of our students have a big world, and every world is completely different than ours, than each other of our students. So again, if it wasn't for that little text that she sent me, She said, please, I'm sorry, can I please turn? Absolutely. So flexibility for the students, for the teachers, for your family, for everything. It's right now, specifically during this pandemic, I think a little grace would go a lot further than no, turn it in because I have to turn it. No, just a little grace. And just as Dr. Ruby was saying, you know, she knows the walk and she understands, so she's able to relate. So, and I'm sure we all can relate because we all have things in our lives that we've gone through, so we can understand each other. So as adults, grace will go a lot further than being so strict. So I encourage you to think about it. And I know you're doing it already, and continue doing it, because we'll get there. It's a journey, remember, not a destination, it's a journey.
So administrators,
Absolutely.
flexibility and forgiveness is important here, because then our teachers will extend that to, in turn, to our students. Jen, another question, please, from chat.
LaDon asked, because some students are afraid to meet in person to take the task, will Indiana be implementing to take the task from home online soon?
The last I heard on that, there is not currently a remote proctoring solution to that, but I know DRC, our high school equivalency testing company in Indiana, has been working on remote solutions. And I would, just taking a wild guess, that probably at some point high school equivalency, I would not surprise me, will be able to be offered with remote proctoring in some format, but we just haven't heard yet. TABE, yes. TABE Class E, yes. Not task yet.
I know one university that had a test that needed to be proctored, and they allowed the proctoring to happen at the public libraries.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's something that they might want to consider.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I know our state leadership in adult basic ed, and as well as our testing company DRC, are very happy to open up other testing sites and are trying to expedite that program. I had to take advantage of that myself. When our school buildings are shut down, back in March, we were totally shut down and we were about locked out of the buildings. So I had to come up with some other testing sites. So yes, so I would go that route exactly as you suggested. Absolutely. Jen?
As a follow-up question to that, if TASK does not step up to the plate and offer online testing like the GED, will Indiana change over to a different HSE test?
Hard to say. I know that there's a contract with this testing company, and at some point it will be up for bid again, and a company that could provide that should make that known in the bidding process if they want to bid on Indiana. There are 3 high school fluency testing products out there: GED, TASK, and HiSET, each run by a different company. And when the opportunity comes, I would advise the company to, if I were running a company and saw that need, I would really try to fulfill that. Yeah. What else, Jen?
At the university level, they're really, with lockdown browsers and things like that, the testing is getting to have more integrity. And so there's ways that faculty are testing students and feeling more confident that they're not accessing other resources to complete their answers. But I think the more we advance in some of those types of lockdown browsers, et cetera, then we may be able to see some of that testing adjust as well too.
Yeah. Jen, what else from chat?
I guess something that kind of relates to it, there is a question about, I'm assuming it was in relationship to Tanya talking about the listening only mode. Ruth asked, how does having listening students work with the state mandate of required 6 hours of instruction? Do you just count it as distant learning?
On that note, these are students that have already attended at least 12 hours. Students who I have known them for a while. We don't just tell them, yeah, sure, you can just come in and be a listener. No, again, they have to put their hours first. And then, of course, Rob knows about it. I consulted with him and he said, yes, as long as the requirements are met, yes. But it's not necessarily every day they're going to be as listeners. And these are extenuating circumstances where they're called into work or things like that. Rob, perhaps you can expand on that?
Yes, For adult basic education, English language learning under adult basic ed, we must have 12 hours where the student's identity can be identified, and that could be a face-to-face, in person, face-to-face electronically, a telephone call, any other type of telecommunications. We must have 12 hours of that. After that, anything else could be distance learning, whether doing packets like Ted has described, or electronically. They're sort of doing some of that work electronically, asynchronously, as we're doing in the universities a lot, and Tanya described. Those are distance learning hours, and that can certainly be counted after you have the 12 hours, what are face-to-face. And I put that in quotes, however that is delivered. Okay.
I noticed the quotes, Rob. I did. It looks like we are very close. We're at 10:29. So there's a question from Barbara. Is the ELL program a significant piece of software or self-developed? I'm guessing that was for Tanya. It must have been really earlier. So short and sweet, Tanya.
Specifically, what platform is she referring to?
It just says, is this ELL program a significant piece of software or self-developed?
Probably what you were demonstrating.
I'm going to
probably.
guess, yes.
Oh, again, the written part is already from a website, and also the audios are from a website. So you can also create your own. What I did is I put the audios together because in the website they give you an audio separate and the PDF file separate. So I just combined the two, the audio, put it on top of the PDF so that they can open the document. And this is called a slide in Google Slides. So you can do that with anything. You can even type a Word document in any lesson you would like and record your own audio into it and give the link. So it's what I did do again is put the audio on top of the PDF file. But this is a website that provides you the audios and the lessons.
Yeah, great. Well, let me thank our panelists. Ted, great job with Department of Corrections. Our Indiana Department of Corrections is a national leader in providing adult basic education services. Thank you for your leadership, and Dr. John Nally and your team with boots on the ground there in those institutions. Ruby, Cain, Stephanie, Moran, thank you for post-secondary. I would certainly recommend Ball State University and Institute University for our undergraduates and graduate education, two great institutions that are leaders in our state in that area. Tanya teaches, again, English language learning in the Indiana Online Only grant program. So we can serve people around the state, English language learners. Just let us know at Monroe County Schools. We share that responsibility with Vincennes University, who provides Indiana Online Only for high school equivalency. So you can look one of us up if you're interested in having really a free teacher in your program, either Tanya or Hannah Price teaching those particular programs. And Jen, thanks a million for putting us together, making this go so smoothly. You're always great at smoothing things out for us. And thank you, Jen. And thank our attendees for a great job we're doing during this, serving our students and learning new ways and new ways of delivering service and support.
And on behalf of the IAACE, thanks for ICCE for joining us for this webinar. And thanks to all the panelists. We remind you this has been recorded, and we will conclude the recording at this time, and it will be available on our website by the end of the day. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.
Bye.